Welcome, everyone. How wonderful to be together in 2022 and in one mountain, many paths. Our mission is what Barbara Marx Hubbard and Dr. Mark Goffney call a planetary awakening in love through unique self symphonies. We are activating a new humanity and we are awakening as a new species. Homo Amor, the fulfillment of Homo sapiens. As a church, synagogue, mosque, temple, zendo, no one is excluded, everyone is included, and we come together to attune to the evolutionary impulse awakening within us. Welcome home, everyone. I am Christina Tehel, the co-executive producer, along with Krista Josepha, Jacqueline Clark, and Jamie Long, and we are all so delighted to be together with each and every one of you today for our 273rd live community broadcast. What a privilege it is to be part of a global community where we support humanity's flourishing. Wow. Teachings from One Mountain, Many Paths are in books by Dr. Mark Goffney and Barbara Marx Hubbard. On our website resource page, you'll find these books like A Return to Eros, The Radical Experience of Being Fully Alive, by both Dr. Mark Goffney and Christina Kincaid, which is now also on Audible, read brilliantly by Gabrielle Anwar. This radical book is a guide of practice to ever more deeply entering outrageous love's energy that drives reality. Also, our live One Mountain broadcast is a key place where new teachings, new leading edge Dharma, new dimensions of the new story emerge for the very first time. So you always want to be here. Join Jamie Long, David Cicerci, and myself for our 11th hour study course about the most pressing issues of our time and our responsibility. We've come to the edge of the human story that's gone on throughout history. We've come to the place where that story can self-terminate. The 11th hour, the final chapter of the story. We do not want to end that story. This course begins 2 weeks on Saturday, January 15th, and you can join us by reaching out to Jamie Long, whose email is in the chat box now. Receive ever deeper mystical gifts by stepping intimately into the work and practice of creating the great Homo Amor library, Memory of the Future. Reach out to me for the holy opportunities. And my email is also now in the chat box. This week, I want to send love and gratitude to Shahat Corden, who has held and continues to hold this global community for decades, and who puts countless hours behind the scenes into keeping details organized and the love flowing. Thank you, Shahat, for all your devotion and service to the thriving of us individually and for the thriving of this outrageous love movement. Use the Zoom and Facebook chat functions to say hello, to let us know where you're from, to speak your prayers, and to resonate the Dharma. On Zoom, check that your chat settings say everyone so that we can all hear from you. Sign up for and read our weekly emails. There you find our replays, our community activities, our feature videos, our volunteer opportunities, celebrations, surprise, and inspirations. What to expect for today. First, a Dharma recap from myself, and from last week's One Mountain, Many Paths episode. Then Dr. Goffney sets our intention. And today, Shahat will resonate our evolutionary love code. And then we move into meditation to enter prayer. Then our evolutionary sermon with Dr. Goffney, and sometimes from Barbara Marx Hubbard. To close, Krista invites us deeper into community, and we bring everyone on for an intimate dance practice and our goodbyes. Mark writes evolutionary love codes. Mark and Barbara studied those codes together, comparing them with Barbara's own 52 codes for conscious self-evolution. These codes crystallize the new story of humanity, evolving the course of consciousness and culture, which is the source code of love. We have the privilege to be a part of the emergence of these first principles and first values. The Dharma gates are open. Every week, we are blessed to serve each other and the evolution of love. Thus, our commitment is to the quality of what we are communicating, and for each of us to take part in this creative process of articulating a new story for a new humanity. So we consciously decide we won't forcefully try to end at the top of the hour, but promise fullness and explosion, to let magic evolve, to serve the evolutionary process. And we will do our best to end around 11 a.m. Pacific time. Of course, if you need to leave early, please do watch the replay, and we look forward to being with you next week. I welcome all who are new. Yes, welcome. Welcome, welcome. We need you. Know that each week is a standalone, and every week builds on the week before. One Mountain, Many Paths is radically committed to telling the new universe story. So here goes my recap from last week. Reweaving Christmas. From biological family to homo amor family. Who's up for celebration? Mad, crazy, wild, holy, gorgeous, beyond imagination celebration. We are making love to reality. We are loving the moment open. We're letting the moment love us open. And we're at a very uncertain moment in history. We're holding that moment together. We're going to walk through it with mad love. Yes, we are walking through this, and we are walking through this with mad love. We're birthing new structures of intimacy. We're gathering in all the traditions. Reality, we know, is the deepening intimacy, progression of intimacies. If you get that in the new story, then you get, we're birthing new levels of intimacy. That's what evolutionary family is. That's the only way to actually understand you are not alone. You can't get that you're not alone because of the individual people around you. That's not going to take us home. You are not alone is only real when we are in evolutionary family. When that evolutionary family has the same energy, the same charge, the same eros. The collapse of value is the root cause of every existential risk. We've allowed value to be hijacked by pre-modern regressive fundamentalist claims, while liberalism, postmodernity says we've deconstructed all value. We need new visions of value, and this evolutionary family works hard towards creating a new source code of values. From within that vision of value, we need to understand there's a story. In that story, each one of us, we're stars, quite literally. We're in a unique self-symphony together. We're telling this new story. We are tailors of Eros, weaving together the strands from pre-modern, modern, and postmodern, validated insights into a new cloth of outrageous love, grounded with policy, vaccine, healthcare, economic, cultural implications, all through the evolutionary map. We revirginate. We find that innocence in ourselves that hasn't gotten lost. We find the virgin and we find the child, the infinite. The great masters in the 3rd century wrote, always a virgin and always a child. That's a passage in the Talmud in Aramaic in the 3rd century. Each one of us, we've always got to be a virgin and we've always got to be an infant. We've always got to be purely innocent, even as we navigate the complexity of the world, even as we map strategies and understand complexity, even after we realize, oh my God, my feet are so guilty, but we come through on the other side of guilt into our second innocence. We've got to find each other. Love's pure light is not ordinary love. Love's pure light is purely innocent. It's the virgin, but it's the virgin of second innocence, not first innocence. So second innocence means that the innocence is never lost. It never goes away. We never lose our virginity. We claim it again. Now, I invite us to more deeply enter into the holy and sacred space of one mountain, many paths, and I turn my word to you, beloved Dr. Mark Goffney.
Beautiful and gorgeous Dharma recapitulation of our incredible recapitulation. And thank you so much. And so fantastic to be with you all, right? And to be together in this moment. And it's a special week. This is going to be actually a 2-week conversation. We're going to start this week and we're going to complete the next part of the conversation, I hope, next week. And we may even go a 3rd week, probably 2 weeks, to actually try and really access this and understand what's going on. Should we be looking up? What does it mean to look up? And really, all of you who've been with us before, over the last decade and over the last 273 broadcasts. And for some of us, we've been talking about this for a couple of decades. Understand that this question that we're coming together specifically to talk about this week. And this is the moment where we set our intention every week in One Mountain, Many Paths. So this is our intention setting. This movie, Don't Look Up, has been the topic, the center of our purpose, our pathos, right? Our passion. For some of us for several decades. Others have joined in the last couple of years, some in the last few months. And for me personally, if I can just be vulnerable and personal, it's been the absolute center of my life for day and night, 18, 19 hours a day. And the movie Don't Look Up captures some of it. It gets some of it deeply right. And it's important. And it's why the movie's gotten panned by so many critics in the media. Of course, it doesn't portray the media particularly well. And so, as David Sirota, one of the authors, wrote, if you're panning the movie too intensely, you're probably a character in it. And there's other things that the movie gets profoundly wrong and misses something utterly essential, which is beyond necessary in responding to this moment in time. And the movie is not particularly about a comet that's about to hit planet Earth, although that's the particular theme of the movie. And we'll talk about it a little bit later, or maybe we'll talk about it now for a second. What are the chances of a comet hitting planet Earth, and what's real about that and what's not? And, our colleague Toby Ord in Oxford wrote a great book called Existential Risk, which we've talked about in some depth. He wrote it only recently. It's a recent contribution to the literature. Toby is a student of Derek Parfit, who's a key moral philosopher from my alma mater, where I did my doctorate at Oxford University. And Derek was deeply concerned with existential risk, as are we. Around Derek Parfit, a circle of people gathered, including Nick Bostrom. And Nick coined the term existential risk in the early 2000s. And Toby, in his book Existential Risk, talks about comets and asteroids and what we might call natural potential disasters and how we should and shouldn't respond to them. But let's just say for now as follows, and we'll get into this a little bit more next week, right, in more depth for about 6 or 7 minutes next week, because it's an enormously important topic and how it's being treated is important. But let's just say for now that the possibility of a natural existential risk of that form happening is extremely slim, but real, but it's less than 1%, and if you do the math over, time, over deep time, and you see how the mathematical equations work, and I've looked at all the equations with some degree of care, and I reviewed them this morning, that actually paradoxically is something we need to look at, and we need to evaluate, should we be building spacecraft that have the ability to deflect or shouldn't we, and what that means. But that actually is exponentially the least serious of the existential risks. So if you want to just track Toby's book as an example, right, you'll see that he begins with natural risk, and then he kind of goes through the risk landscape, and it just begins with, asteroids and comets. Then much more serious is interior Earth events, supervolcanic, possible eruptions, possible stellar explosions, not high on the list. But then the real issues are actually the state of nuclear weapons today. And actually the nuclear threat has not disappeared at all. It's the same as it was at the height of the nuclear era for a set of reasons, right? The stockpiling, right, and how it's being done and what's being done to safeguard risk and what's not generates a reality when that hair trigger is actually one of the most serious risks we have. We've just looked away from it, right? Climate change is obviously number 2, right? 3, pandemics, which we've been talking about for a decade intensely in our conversation. Unaligned artificial intelligence, right, is the next one. The gap between have and have-nots. And then the second form of existential risk, which is not an extinction event, which causes the death of humanity and most of life on planet Earth, but the death of our humanity, right, which was also a sub-theme already taking place, in the Don't Look Up movie. There's a particular scene when Bash says we have, 47,000, whatever the number was, this enormous amount of data points about you. We got to know everything about you. We can typecast you. We know about how you're going to die, right? We know implicitly we can predict exactly what you're going to do, and we can control you. That's the death of our humanity, which is deeply at play. And of course, Toby Ord, misses that topic. He talks only about the first kind of existential risk, the death of humanity, the potential extinction events, and not about the second kind of existential risk, right, the death of our humanity. Point being, as we set our intention, the movie got something enormously right, in that, wow, we have to look at existential risk, and we can't look away. And that's absolutely gorgeous and true. And we're going to allude today to several scenes from the movie. We're going to actually look at 8 scenes from the movie next week that we're going to actually have the clips with us. We're preparing them now, that were completely unnoticed. None of the critics noticed them. Pretty much no one commented on them. And they're actually the key to the movie. They're gorgeous, both in what they say and what they don't say. So next week we're big movie weeks. I just want to invite you next week. Come with an open, wide, crazy heart, with serious intellectual rigor, popcorn for sure. And next week we're going to go through 8 clips and look at them carefully. And this week we're going to set the context. So here's the context. The context is we're poised between utopia and dystopia. And we say that every week. And every week when I say it, and I've been saying it for several years, almost a decade in different contexts. And my dear colleague and beloved friend, Barbara Marx Hubbard, in her way, said it for decades. And we came together to form One Mountain, Many Paths in order to invite reality to look up, right? Against all the forces that are saying, don't look up. But to look up and to understand that not only must we respond to existential risk, but we can respond to existential risk, that we have the capacity to. But in order to respond, we can't just do it through changing the infrastructure, through technological solutions, as Isherwell, head of Bash Industries, kind of representing the techno-optimist kind of Elon Musk Singularity University kind of school, or Peter Diamandis, right? And all wonderful, wonderful human beings, but who are basically taking, let's change the infrastructure. Let's build technological solutions. That won't take us home. It won't get us there. It's also not enough to look at social structure. Let's change the laws. Let's change the covenants, right, in society in terms of the laws and in terms of the social structures, right, which are, the way we do government and the way we do business. That has value, but it's not going to change it. We're only going to change it if we change the superstructure. And the superstructure is a word: superstructure, infrastructure, social structure. These are words by Manfred Harris, who's a good, right, meta-theoretician. And it means something, superstructure means something really simple: the story. The superstructure is the world story. It's the worldview. It's the metaphysics. It's what I believe about the nature of reality. It's the story I live in that drives not only me, but that drives every single person making the movie, every single person watching the movie, every single person commenting on the movie, every critical review. Everybody is driven by a hidden superstructure, which is a hidden story, right? It's a source code story that we live inside of, that we're barely even aware that we live inside of it. My friend and colleague, Lana, right? Lana Wachowski, I just made Matrix 4, the blue pill and the red pill, right? And what it means is, what Lana was trying to say correctly is that if I live inside the Matrix, it means I'm living inside of a simulation. I'm living inside of a story. And that story drives everything I do. And that story itself is what we call in modernity a success story. I've got to be successful. If I'm successful, it's okay. And success is always based on me against someone else, me getting more of, me getting status. Success is rivalrous conflict. It's always governed by a win-lose metrics. And it drives everything. It drives the economy. It drives politics, right? It drives religion. It drives the academy. It drives everything. There is no way to talk about COVID. There is no way to talk about vaccines. There is no way to talk about any decision that we make personally in life. Do we stay with our partner? Do we not stay with our partner? How do we love and who do we love? Where do we live? Where do we go to school or not go to school? Right? How do we spend our time? How do we show up? It's all right, deeply governed by an internal source code, which is modernity's success story. Wow. Pre-modernity was a rivalrous conflict between different nations and religions, particularly religions. Which religion was the best one? Who was going to be successful? Rivalrous conflict governed by win-lose metrics. Only one religion's really got it right. Modernity moved the same success story from the competition between religions, rivalrous conflict governed by win-lose metrics between religions, to rivalrous conflict governed by win-lose metrics between everyone. What Hobbes called the natural state of war, between people and family systems, between government departments, between different states, between different social structures, between different organizations, between different divisions in the same company, right? The whole thing. And that drives the extraction model, right? And that drives our inability to form consensus about how to respond to existential risk. And that drives the exponential growth curves that will fall off. And that drives the ever widening gap between the have and the have-nots. And that drives literally the creation of a caste system, what India called a caste system, in which we're literally going to have a less than 1% of super elite who are augmented and cognitively enhanced and physically enhanced and longevity enhanced, and the entire rest of humanity. And we're a hair's breadth away from it. And that launches, right, the systems which augur for the death of our humanity. Right? That is to say, right, as Isherwell said, that character, the head of Bash Industries, collecting data bits on people and creating systems that actually undermine free will itself, appeal to the human lowest common denominator. So all of this is in place. Now, we're going to look at the movie really, really carefully next week. But just for now, how do we respond to it? And the only way to respond is a new superstructure. The only way to respond is a new story, right? A new story of value, a new story of first principles and first values embedded in the story of value, which becomes a shared grammar of value for humanity. And notice just how tragic the movie was. At the beginning of the movie, you've got this lovely group of people kind of bowling, when Kate, right, who's played by Jennifer Lawrence, comes in and she's got this disturbing news about a comet that might hit Earth, and that they're bowling and they got to do the calculations, right? And Dr. Randall Mindy says, okay, how are we going to do the calculations on the trajectory of this comet? And he says, okay, what would Carl Sagan do? Let's go back to first principles. So there's a notion of first principles in mathematics, right? That's actually there, that's still somewhat at play. And he does the first principles calculations, and they come to the conclusion that actually this comet's going to hit planet Earth. And then they try and share that information, but actually, because we've moved into this postmodern moment where all values been deconstructed, so even first principles in mathematics, which have been ratified and peer-reviewed all over the world, are rejected. So even the facts of first principles in mathematics are rejected. Because, now stay really close, friends, it's gorgeous. Because if you don't have first principles and first values in the interior sciences, meaning in ethos, right, in the world of interiors, in the world of value, in the world of goodness, truth, and beauty, if you don't have first principles and first values that govern what it means to be alive and what it means to love, right? And if we don't have a universal grammar of value as the context for our diversity, if we're not on all playing our unique instruments, but within the same musical score of value, if we don't have first principles and first values in regard to interiors, then the first principles of math are going to be rejected also. Facts are going to be rejected. Because here's the thing, stay really close. It's really beautiful, right? In the pre-modern era, right, the claim was there's value, but the value is owned by one religion and all the religions were in rivalrous conflict competing with each other. We get to modernity, and modernity, the major movement of modernity was value is not real, only facts are real. That was the major movement. But then along comes postmodernity, and postmodernity says, hey, facts aren't real either, because facts themselves are a value. Did everyone get that sense? Taking facts seriously, that's a value also. So if you deconstruct interior values, then there's nothing compelling to tell you to take facts seriously. So you can have scenes in the movie in which, although all first principles of mathematics tell you that the comet's happening, and all the modeling tells you it's going to hit Earth at a particular time, but there's complete confusion. And 23% of the people say there's not a comet, and other people are doing book contracts. And everyone's lost in an ego win-lose metrics game. And even the hero, Randall Mindy, Dr. Mindy, gets drawn from being an idealistic scientist to a major part of the movie, becoming kind of a showboating celebrity until he remembers who he is, and he remembers gorgeously. So you can't even begin this story. You can't respond to existential risk, which is real. We're poised between utopia and dystopia. That's actually real. I think about it literally 19 hours a day. Anyone who's been around us at the center knows that our entire energy and effort is directed towards this. But what we understand is, let's do this together. We can do this together. We can look up together. We can't respond just by infrastructure. The Isherwell response is not going to work. We can't respond just by reconfiguring some laws in society and reallocating how we do certain kinds of social structures. We got to change the superstructure, which means we got to tell a new story based on first principles and first values. There's not only values in mathematical equations, there's values in the equations of life. And we actually understand, like Da Vinci did in the Renaissance, at that time between worlds. We're in a time between worlds. We're in a time between stories, that actually there are values in the equations of our life. We've articulated an intimacy equation. We've articulated an eros equation. And I spent the last 4 days articulating 10 other equations, first principles and first values, in the interior sciences of life that are the ground for a universal grammar of value, that's a context for our diversity, that allows for global coordination. We can't coordinate. And did you notice the movie? They couldn't coordinate. India's knocked out. Russia, India, and Japan are knocked out, and they're not going to get a piece of the, potential wealth that might come from the minerals in the meteorites. And so then they decide to launch their own mission to deflect the comet. And then their ships are blown up, probably by the United States. No global coordination. No coordination within the United States. Rallies fighting against rallies. You can't coordinate, stay close, right? Unless we have shared ordinating values. And ordinating values means values which we ordinate by, right? Ordinate means our compass, right? Our compass of joy. But our compass of joy, right, is a byproduct of a shared story of value. Like, wow. Like, wow. The Death Star moved today. We're in Star Wars, first episode. You want to take down the Death Star, the culture of death. You can only do it with a direct hit. Nothing else will move anything. And the only possible direct hit, and it's the most gorgeous direct hit, and it's radically beyond imagination possible, but it requires our all, is that we come together to articulate a new story, to tell a new story. And I want to tell you, and I want to just share something personal. I'm going to end our intention setting, and I spend a little more time today on the intention setting because it's so insanely important, okay? It's so insanely important. So I've been privileged, together with Zach Stein and Barbara Marx Hubbard and our co-founder Ken Wilber, right, and Howard Bloom, and it's an incredible group of human beings, right, who've come together, right, many of them on this phone call, right, to co-found Envision the Center. And we know that we have the capacity to tell this new story of Homo Amor. right? The fulfillment of Homo sapien as Homo Amor. And to tell this new story, we need to actually enact and do the research and not just claim it and not just declare it, get the facts together, integrate the best of pre-modern, modern, and postmodern, hire the right research staff, right? Do the right investigations and actually articulate what we call Homo Amor, the tenets of intimacy, cosmoerotic humanism, right? The best new story, which is a Darwin level, Marx level, Freud level intervention, right, in the vector of existential risk. The new story is the only effective intervention in the vector of existential risk. And I just want to say something really just heartrending. I haven't succeeded in funding it yet the way it needs to be funded. I don't take a salary, so it's not about me, right? Because, and why, right? And it's probably part of it's my failure, my incapacity, right? So I apologize for that. And part of it is, right, people I love madly just won't look up. I mean, they just won't take it seriously. Oh, that's that beautiful thing Mark's doing. Isn't that great? Oh, Mark and Barbara, yeah, Mark and Ken, right? Mark and Zach, isn't that great? That's a great thing they're doing. And then people go about their business and their egoic wounding, right? And their trauma, right? And make sure to invest and save all sorts of money to take care of their 3 kids or their 1 kid, right? And credit, but actually just hire the staff that we need to do the research and get it done, we don't do. Because in some sense, right, even working with existential risk is a hobby that fills our time, right? It's a form of what we call pseudo-eros. But the eros of actually stepping in and saying this is ours to do, wow. So I'm just sharing a painful thing, right? And we're gonna make it happen. And I'm gonna give everything I have day and night, right, to articulating this new story. But well, wow, right? Can you imagine if we could resource it the way it needs to be resourced, right? Right? We can change this. We can deflect this comet, and it's not a comet, right? It's actually the vector, right, of the failure of framework. It's the vector of failed stories. It's the vector of a world. The vector of the comet is the vector of a world sans first principles and first values. It's shocking, right? It's shocking, right? We can do this. We have not yet begun to create. We have not yet begun to fight. We have not yet begun to love. But we got to do this for real, right? It's not about looking down. It's about looking up. It's about creating a resource, creating the passion, right? Creating the singularity of purpose, which means to be a lover. Because that's in the end, all that we can be. We can be lovers. And to be a lover means I got to love myself madly. I got to love you madly. And I've got to love we madly. And I've got to love beyond my immediate circle and beyond, right, what makes me and my personal journey of my hero's journey. My hero's journey can't be just my hero's journey. That's Joseph Campbell. And Joseph Campbell was great. And he was teaching in the 40s at Sarah Lawrence, in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. And he did a beautiful job. But the hero's journey is also a story that's about me, and it's about my mythology. And it's a beautiful, but actually, right, to become Homo Amor is to realize that it's our hero's journey. We're now moving beyond just the individual human being. The individual human being does not disappear. Unique self is gorgeous and necessary. And every person has their unique hero's journey that matters infinitely. And your transformation participates in the transformation of the whole thing. Yes. And it's now our hero's journey. No one stands alone. It's us. It's together. It's the we. It's the unique we. It's the unique self symphony. We need each other. We've got to do this together. And we will. And we can. And we must. Because it's the true meaning of love today. To love today is to love reality open and to respond directly, unequivocally, fearlessly to existential risk by pouring every resource we have to do the one thing that historians agree changes the vector of history, which is a new superstructure, which is a new story, not a fanciful story, not a conjecture, not a made-up story, but a new story that integrates the best information from every dimension, from every sector, weaves it together into a new whole greater than the sum of the parts. That's the only thing that heals the global intimacy disorder. And if this movie was about anything, it was about snapshots of the global intimacy disorder. Oh my God. And it's only a new story, right? A shared story of value, rooted in first principles and first values as a context for our diversity, in which we can all play our unique instruments in the unique self symphony that can actually augur for, militate towards a planetary awakening in love through unique selves and through unique self symphonies. That's the vision. That's the vision of evolutionary intimacy. We're omni-considerate for the sake of the whole. I move beyond my individual, and even again, I'm mad love and honor and respect even the people closest to me, right? There's just a small group. They're actually saying, yes, I'm standing for this. And everyone else who's gorgeous, but yeah, can I fit this in between the 17 other things that ultimately are not going to matter at all? Can I fit this in as my hobby? Can I fit this in as this is my spirituality gig? Fills up some, right? It's important, sure. No, stand for it, right? With everything we got, right? Let's go all the way in this lifetime. Because actually, friends, the future, whether there'll be a future at all in a way that we understand it, right, depends on us. Oh my God, so that's our intention. That's a big intention. And oh my God, so I'm going to turn now, and thank you, everyone. I'm going to turn to Shahati to resonate the code, right? And then we're going to go into, we're going to do a prayer. We're going to talk a little bit about how prayer shows up in this movie. And then we're going to just do some snapshots, setting the context. We're going to finish pretty close to on time today. And then we're going to come together again next week. We're going to blow this away. We're going to go in scene by scene. Remember, bring your popcorn, bring a salute, right? Bring your full heart. And we're just going to blow it away the next step next week. Okay, so we ready to go? Okay, Shati, give us a code. Oh my God.
Hello, my friends. I'm honored to be resonating this week's code after this wonderful intention, which kind of makes me so full. There was this movie, here we are, and here is our work, and this is what we do. Existential risk is the second shock of existence. The first shock of existence is the death of the human being. The second shock of existence is the death of humanity. You cannot respond to the first shock without the second shock, or to the second shock without the first shock. You cannot respond to either the first or the second shock of existence without going inside and finding out what we actually know. Only first principles and first values embedded in a story of value have the capacity to respond to the first or the second shock of existence. My friends, in the end, it's all about looking up, loving madly, loving yourself, loving your life, loving me, loving my life, and loving our lives, and being willing to die for that love. That is the only true meaning of being alive. And then you realize that you and we cannot and will not die, for life and love are eternal. And yet, whether we live and die depends on us. I turn my word to you, Dr. Mark.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, friends. Okay, so let's look at this code. Leonard Cohen's going to be with us, right? The song he sang towards the end of his life, Darker, it was about existential risk. It was the last song that he made. And he was looking for the way through. And we are going to find this way through. And we are radically positive, even as we're radically serious, and we're filled with joy, because only the joy of radical responsibility can animate this response to existential risk. So I want to existential risk. I want to look with you at the code again. And I'm going to ask you if you can, let's put it there, right? Right? Let's take a look at the code again. Let's put it at the bottom. Okay. And let's just read it together. I'm asking you to read it with me. Okay. We wrote the code like 1 second before One Mountain started. Okay. And I was up a good part of the night just feeling into this. So existential risk is the second shock of existence. What does that mean? So the first shock of existence historically is the realization early in history that we were going to die, right? It's the death of the human being. So the realization of the death of the human being, not just the physical fact of death, but the existential realization of death, which probably takes place early in the hunter-gatherer era. People used to think, right, that it happened in farming, right, was agricultural, agrarian. All right, David Graeber has written a very, very good book called The Dawn of Everything, where he affirms what I've long thought and talked about and what many of the interior scientists say, that actually death came, the skull grinned at the banquet much earlier, at the very dawn of our existence in the hunter-gatherer era. We realize, oh my God, we're gonna die. But does that sound like a scene from the movie? It is. We're gonna die. But stay close, friends. It's subtle, it's deep, it's wild, it's beautiful. And the first shock of existence, it's the death of the human being. But what happens when we realize the first shock of existence? What happens? Anybody? We're pressed inside. Death creates life. It's only, wrote Rilke, right, when I come face to face naked before death, that I'm born. It's only death that turns life into a genuine option. Oscar Wilde, right, understood very well when he wrote The Picture of Dorian Gray, that Dorian Gray, who lives forever, becomes degraded and becomes corrupt because he never chooses. And death creates a scenario, a simulation in which we choose. And in choice is our dignity. And in the freedom of our will, not absolute freedom, doesn't mean we can do anything or choose anything. It doesn't mean we're not determined in part by antecedent causes that set the stage, but there's a dimension of the human being which is not reducible. Not just to the human being, there's a dimension even in the world of life, but it comes to full bloom in the human being where we choose. And when we confront the skull that grins at the banquet, then we choose for the first time. That's why death is so important. So I'm going to tell you a secret. It's unlikely that most of us on this call are going to be here in 30 years from now. Some of us will. Unlikely that most of us will. Right? 40 years just went down. And I have a little secret for you, friends. It's going to go by in a second. It's going to go by in a freaking second. And then it's over. Or is it? Because actually, when we go inside, when we step inside, then we go to the one place where we have access to wisdom, to information, to gnosis. Just like the mathematician goes inside the depths of his own capacity, right, to imagine, but not imagine in the childlike sense. God is a figment of our imagination, but our imagination is a figment of God. The mathematician deploys imagination as Al-Farabi, as particularly, right, the great masters of Sufism and Kashmir Shaivism and the esoterics of Hebrew wisdom talked about it. I imagine means that actually I have the capacity to imagine the interior of reality. And when I imagine the interior of reality and I come face to face with death, I realize it's not all over in one lifetime. I realize, and I'm going to talk in more depth about that next week. I just want to put it on the table now, right? But I just realized actually it's not over when it's over. And I'm going to try and share with you next week 6 ways in which we all know internally in our own interior gnosis, when we're pressed inside, it's not over when it's over. Death is real. Death demands that we choose. Death is the simulation of reality. And we take it seriously. And we do everything we can to live and to live gorgeously and to live deeply and live with radical meaning. And what that means, we'll also talk about next week, because there's this gorgeous plays in the movie that both get there and don't get there. But the first shock of existence, the realization of death presses us inside and activates our ascension, activates our descent into the depths, activates our gnosis, activates our knowing, activates what we call our anthro-ontological knowing. Anthro, human being, like anthropology. Ontological, for reals, is what we really know. Anthro-ontology is the great new field. which we're developing at the center, and together with my friend Howard Bloom at his institute, he calls it omnology, but it's the same thing. And Howard's kind of the kind of, if you will, the guru of NASA, who's a science, right, dear friend, and we're working together. And just anthrontology is what we know when we go inside. So when we go inside and we confront the first shock of existence, the death of the human being, right, we actually, from that place, create new knowledge. We create all of culture and all of the great traditions and all of the interior sciences, right, and all of, right, the best of the religions and the best, right, of the deepest wisdom structures, right, in every dimension, in every era of existence, that all come together and tell us that it's not over when it's over, that death is a night between two doors. But we can't avoid the first shock. Right? The first shock of existence is real, and we have to actually not engage in what Ernest Becker called the denial of death, but to actually face death and let death breathe life into us as we find our way to the continuity of consciousness. And we make completely different choices than we otherwise would have made, because our worldview, our superstructure has changed. We have a new worldview. And we actually begin to understand that every choice we make and every move we make, right, is not about my position on the chessboard of rivalrous conflict governed by win-lose matrix. And even though I pretend it's not that, that's actually what drives me. But actually every move I make, right, is actually creating the next dimension, my continuity of consciousness. It's writing the script of my next story, right? Wow. And so I dip my quill into the ink of value. I dip my quill into the ink of first principles and first values embedded in a story of value. And I realize that my story is not isolated. It's not alone. My story participates in a larger story, that actually the universe is a story. The universe is a love story. Evolution is the love story of the universe. Not as a declaration, not as a quaint idea, right? Not as a fundamentalist claim, not as a new age claim, but it's actually the best take on the sciences that we have. Now, if we get the right resources, we'll do this faster. If we don't, we'll get it done. I'll die doing it. But we can actually show that's true. It takes resource. It takes research across domains. It takes heavy footnotes, right? And a story that's super clear to anyone. But the super clear story, whether the super clear story is told in 500 pages, right, or in 100 pages, doesn't matter, but it's got to be footnoted so extensively that you actually realize this is really true. This is not a claim. It's not made up. This is the best take we have on reality. Reality is a love story. We do live in an amorous cosmos. There is continuity of consciousness. Love actually is eternal. Love doesn't die. We actually will all be together again. We got to show that. We got to gather the information available. And there's information available from different diverse disciplines that we need to integrate into a new story and a new whole greater than the sum of the parts. And I can't do that myself. We got to do that together. That's part one. That's the first shock of existence. Now, the second shock of existence, and this is our code. The second shock of existence means we go through, stay close, right? We go through epic after epic after epic of human development, right? We start with the first Big Bang, matter. Matter triumphs in life, the second Big Bang, right? The biosphere. Then the biosphere triumphs in the depths of the human self-reflective mind, the noosphere, the sphere of the idea, the mind. And then we go through all the stages of human development, and we come to this precise moment in time in which Toby Ord writes Existential Risk. And we realize that at some point, we kept developing our technological capacity, particularly in the last 300 years, but we stopped developing, right, our interior capacity. We developed our exterior technologies. We stopped developing our interior technologies. And so we've got these runaway exterior technologies. We call them exponential technologies, but they're untethered. They're available to non-state actors. They're easily weaponized. What Nick Bostrom, Toby Ord's colleague, calls a black ball can come out of the urn, which is not a comet, but it's actually an existential risk technology. It's a weaponized technology, which is not a nuclear device, which requires an entire state to enact it, because uranium is very easy to track, and to develop enriched uranium is very, very easy to monitor, or relatively easy. But we're talking about what Nick Bostrom calls in his essay, The Vulnerability Hypothesis, a black ball that comes out of the urn, right? Not a white ball or a great ball, white ball positive technology, gray ball mix, positive and negative, black ball, and something can be easily built, easily constructed by non-state actors, easily deployed, and there's no way to stop it. Now we can respond to that also, but only with a new story. So the black ball is the second shock of existence. It's the possibility that not a comet, but the next 8 chapters in Toby Ord's book, Existential Risk, published 2019, Oxford University Press. But there's 20 other books. Toby's is the last in a long line of them. And science fiction has been looking at this in its own way, right? In kind of book called Terminal Visions, right? So wow, that's the second shock of existence. So the second shock of existence is not the death of the human being, right? When I realize existentially that death is right before me and that death presses me inwards to create new gnosis, that's the first shock of existence, the death of the human being. We're now facing the second shock of existence, the death of humanity, the potential death of humanity, meaning all of the past can't pass the baton to us because we, the present, are going to disappear. Extinction events. And then the future is unborn. And you notice there were 2 beautiful shots of babies in the movie. And there were beautiful shots of mother and child in the movie, right? A panda bear and a rhinoceros, right? Like, wow, right? That's all unborn. The whole future is unborn, right? The future, the memory of the future is erased because we didn't respond to the second shock of existence. Now, the second shock of existence isn't meant to catapult us into the paroxysm of paralysis, right? It's not meant to catapult us into the paroxysm of global action confusion or the stillborn deadening of global action paralysis. Now, the second shock of existence needs to function just like the first shock did. Just like the first shock pressed us inwards, and we told the greatest stories of the human spirit, which are evolving stories of value. So now the second shock of existence, not the death of the human being, first shock, second shock of existence, death of humanity, also needs to press us inwards to tell a new story of value based on first principles and first values. And it's what the movie didn't do. Right? The movie kind of understood intuitively we need first principles, but it talked about first principles purely in terms of science. That's the fact, and the facts have been rejected because the new movie is an expression of modernity. And modernity's notion is we can get rid of values, but at least facts have value. But of course, that's not true. In other words, the movie gets it's not true, but doesn't get that it's actually participating in the move of modernity. And the move of modernity is, again, modernity says we get rid of the values of pre-modernity. The only thing that actually is real are facts. And then the movie's completely surprised. Why are the facts not getting out there? Why is everyone not listening? Why is science not being taken seriously? Because, friends, a fact itself is a value. And if you deconstruct value, facts can't stand because truth itself is a value. Facts are comprised of truth, beauty, a certain kind of elegance, right? They hold an essential goodness. But if truth and goodness and beauty, those values are deconstructed, then there's no room for facts, right? Like, wow, did you get that? So the movie's making this desperate gambit to call us back to facts. But you can't call us back to facts unless we come back to value. And then a fact can be a value, right? How many people get that? How many people get it? Who gets just a sense of what we're saying? It's deep. It's crazy deep, friends. It's crazy deep, right? It's crazy deep. You can't respond to the second shock of existence unless you have first principles and first values embedded in a story of value. It's not enough to have first principles and first values, and it's not enough to have a new story. You need to bring them together, right? It's in that merger, which has got to be articulated in a great library. And the great library has got to have 20,000 word books, and it's got to have 10,000 word pamphlets, and it's got to have, long books which have the depth footnotes, and it needs to be resourced, and it needs to be distributed all over the world, in which we actually reclaim value, not as a fundamentalist gambit, not as a new age claim, right? Not as a secular humanist, Sartrean, right? Let's create meaning even though it's not real, which is, of course, the move made by my friend Werner Erhard. Meaning is not real, but we'll create it anyways. No, we have to understand that meaning is real and meaning is disclosed and meaning exists and it's for us to disclose. And then the second shock of existence, the death of our humanity, we then realize, oh, we can actually change this, can change the vector of the whole thing. And then we realize, and even if we would actually confront an extinction event, the death of our humanity, right? The death of humanity itself, we would still pray. And it wouldn't be the end of the story either. Because the same way the death of the individual human being isn't the end of the story, the death of one epoch of humanity is not the end of the story. And just as we do everything we can with all our power, passion, potency, we give everything to make sure that we live and our children live and that we live deeply and gorgeously and beautifully. Right? Life is an ultimate value. Nonetheless, we understand there's some things we're willing to give our life up for. Now stay close, friends. This is so gorgeous. Even though life is an ultimate value, it's not the ultimate value, it's an ultimate value. And it's only when I realize there's a larger field of value, the Tao, the Dharma, there's a larger field of value, first principles and first values embedded in a story of value in which my story participates. It's only when I get that, it's only when there's something to die for, there's something to sacrifice for, that I'm born. I'm not born till then. I'm not alive till then. Until I realize that there's a value which transcends death, and therefore a value I'm willing to die for, I'm willing to stake my life on, I'm not even alive, right? And that's true about the death of the human being. It's true about the death of humanity. Like, wow, right? Let's read the code, and we're going to end with prayer. And next week, we're going to dive into the movie. This is part one. We'll recapitulate next week, the beginning of part one. Then we're going to dive into the movie. Bring your heart. Bring your heart wide open. Find us, right? Krista, if you can write in the chat box, right? I'm going to make an appeal right now. And Krista, if you can write in the chat box, anyone who'd like to help resource this story, right? Find me directly, right? Put my email in the chat box. Find me directly. Partner. Anyone who's already a partner and can go the next step. Partner, let's do this for real. For realsies. Wow. Right? So let's put that in the chat box. That's the resourcing. Barbara always did the resourcing every week. That's the resourcing, right? My email's in the chat box. Contact us. Right? I'll meet you with this week, any evening. Let's make it happen. Now let's read this code. And let's finish with prayer. Right? Like, oh my God, right? Existential risk is the second shock of existence. The first shock of existence is the death of the human being. The second shock of existence is the death of humanity. You can't respond to the first shock without the second shock, right? Or to the second shock without the first shock, right? In both cases, you're responding by going inside and uncovering and disclosing the field of value which transcends death. And it's only if I live in a field of value that transcends death that I can face the first shock and second shock and actually learn how to live, learn how to avoid the second shock, and learn how to live knowing that the first shock, the death of the human being, is this night between 2 days, and to be able to face death with full joy. Because the only reason we ever face death with angst and pain is because we haven't lived our life well. A life well lived in the field of value and joy, where I've taken my unique risk, when I've clarified and lived my unique heart's desire, and I've given my unique gift, and I've played my instrument, the unique self-symphony, I look in the face of death and I understand, I feel it in my body in my near-death experience. Wow, I'm going to the next stage. Okay, so let's look at it. Let's look at it, right? Right? Only first principles and first values, paragraph 3, only first principles and first values embedded in a story of value have the capacity to respond to the first or the second shock of existence. And then it's about looking up, loving madly, loving yourself for real, loving your life, loving me, love me, I'm going to love you, loving my life, and loving our we, loving our lives. in being willing to die for that love. Love's not real unless you're willing to die for it. And I can't transcend death, neither the death of humanity or the death of the individual, unless I know that love's real. Right? Wow. Wow. Last piece of the code. In the end, it's about looking up, loving madly, loving yourself, loving your life, loving me, loving my life, loving we, loving our lives, and being willing to die for that love. That's the only true meaning of being alive. And then you realize that you and we cannot and will never die. We'll never die eternally. We'll transition between worlds, for life and love are eternal. And yet in this moment, at this time, whether we live or die depends on us. Wow. So I invite you to be with us for just the next 3 minutes, and then we're going to look at prayer, and Krista, you'll close us. Okay? Remember the scene in the movie? Right at the end of the movie, and we can find each other for a moment in our chat box. Who remembers the scene at the end of the movie? Right? When they're sitting and having dinner. Right? Who remembers that scene? That they're having dinner, and we're going to come back, we're going to actually show it next week, or we're going to look at the text of it, but they're sitting there having dinner. Because what do you do? Or what do you do, right? When it's about to be over, you do the simplest thing in the world, you have dinner. Right? You sit and you eat together, and you laugh and you talk and you share. Right? And they want to be grateful. And they want to pray. And they want to pray. And they understand, even if you don't believe in God, believe in prayer. Because the God you don't believe in doesn't exist, and prayer is real. And here we have this movie that can't embrace first principles and first values, and yet, and they say, in the family in Randall, Dr. Mindy said, in the Mindy family, we don't know how to pray. And they said, well, let's just say amen. We're not sure how to say amen, or even what amen means. So we'll talk about amen next week. And then the young kid, the kind of anarchist, the same guy who plays Paul Atreides in the movie Dune, right? He says, hey, I got this. And he prays. What prayer means is that we know we're not alone. There's a field of value beyond the death of the human being, and beyond the death of humanity. And that life is an ultimate value. And that we stand for every life and for every baby and for every adult. And every life has infinite dignity and infinite value. And we give everything to create life. Everything except for giving up our humanity, giving up our value. Value itself transcends death. And it's only by articulating a story of first values and first principles that we can face the first and second shock of existence. And it's only by articulating the depth of value that we can claim fact as a value, and science can be taken seriously. Last sentence. Only if there's interior science, value, can exterior science be taken seriously. Modernity tried to say, let's get rid of interior science. We'll just have exterior science facts. And modernity forgot that a fact is a value. So friends, let's pray. Let's pray. Right? Let's pray together. And Krista, before we turn on the prayer, right? And we'll look at that prayer next week. Okay? We'll look at that prayer next week. But before we turn on the prayer, let's be completely focused on right here we are right now. Before we turn on the prayer, Leonard Cohen, maybe just come on for a second and tell us how to get involved, and how to resource, and how to join, and how to play, and how to do anything we can, right? Yay. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Mark Gaffney. That was so beautiful and so inspiring and hopeful. And I just want to start by introducing myself. I saw a lot of new people here this week. So my name is Krista Josefa, and I have the privilege to invite us here every week to come closer, to participate, to co-create. And I saw so many people write in the chat box, this is so inspiring. It's such a pleasure to be here. But I also noticed a few people saying it's a lot, and it is a lot. And it's beautiful that it's a lot. But I just want to say that if you didn't get everything intellectually, just receive it. And also I wanted to let you know that we create beautiful summaries of every week's teaching, and we send them out every Tuesday. So also if you're watching this on Facebook or on YouTube, please make sure that you sign up on our website, onemountainmanypaths.org, and then we will send you the summary and also the weekly clip and the replay, so you can just digest everything at your own pace. And so the invitation for all of us is to participate. Mark already mentioned it, what we are calling a unique self symphony. So we are all needed as unique selves to make our unique contribution. And this telling the new story, this movement, this responding to existential risk, something that we really need to do together. We all need each other. So I want to invite you 3 ways where you can participate in creating this together. And the first is the invitation to participate by inviting your friends. Make sure that we show up here every week. Next week, even more people, and the week after, even more people, because I feel us being here together, listening to this Dharma, to the new story, and placing our attention on the evolution of love is so powerful. So make that commitment to show up here every week and invite your friends. And if you're ready for another step, I want to let you know that we are creating together, Mark said it, the Great Library, which is a lot of books that capture this new story. And we do that with groups of people who are all participating in different projects. So if you want to get involved, if you want to share your time, if you want to share your gifts, you are so welcome to do that. It's not only good and great for the world, but it's also a really beautiful way to participate and to connect with other pioneering souls and to bathe in this beautiful field of outrageous love that we share here together as a community. And the third way is what I want to show you on our website, which is onemountainmanypaths.org. Just 1 second to open it. And that is actually becoming a member, because as a member of One Mountain, if you click here on our website membership, you can read all about it. And as a member, you get access to our online community space, but also to these 9 deep courses: Awakening Your Unique Self, Reclaiming Eros, Becoming a Future Human is actually a course that is recorded together with Barbara Marx Hubbard, Daniel Schmachtenberger, and Dr. Mark Gaffney. So this will enable you also to, in your own time, study the Dharma. So go to onemountainmanypaths.org, click on membership, and just read through it carefully. And I can't wait to meet you, to get to know you, and to meet you inside. Thank you so much for being here. And with that, I give my word back to you, Dr. Mark.
Friends, you're welcome. Like, welcome. Let's make this real. Let's build this all the way. Right? This is ours to do. Like, love mad. And if you want a course and you can't afford the $25 or whatever it is, we'll give it to you. Don't worry about that. Right? Let's build this. Let's resource this. Let's create this. Right? Your gift crazy matters. Our gift matters. Let's pray. The holy and the broken, hallelujah. All of our lives matter. The stories of our lives matter. Right? That's why it's so critical to create the future, because every story matters wildly. There's a blaze of light in every word. It doesn't matter which we heard, the holy or the broken, hallelujah. Oh my God, love man. Right? Deep in. Holy or broken, hallelujah, take us inside.
Now I've heard there was a secret chord that David played and it pleased the Lord, but you don't really care for music, do ya? It goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor, major, the baffled king composing hallelujah. Hallelujah.
let's meet in the chat box and we just pray, right? We pray for resources. We pray for possibility. We pray for the future, right? And maybe a great prayer is, right? I stand for the future. I partner with you, God. I stand for the future. I partner with you, evolution, right? I stand for the future. I partner with you, love, right? Oh my God, right? And let's find it here. Oh my God. I'm just going to read some of the prayers with permission, right? Oh my God, right? Right? I pray for the resources and people, right? And skills and everything we need together to bring this story into the world, right? Oh my God, creating Homo Amor, right? And Barina, welcome, right? Welcome. I pray to live my fullest power and love this year and give my life to this revolution, right? Like for realsies, Peter, my prayer to find within that which is all of this and that and all of creation, right? To do it together. Right, Vashti, I pray that love's wisdom in every cell of every living thing guides me in imparting this new story of love and creating the future together. Ujas, I pray I go all the way in this lifetime, right? From love to outrageous love to unique self symphony. Yes, I pray, right? Claire, to open my heart, right? Ever bigger and let it all in and give it all out, always, all the way. Jamie, I pray to go all the way in this lifetime, right? Together with Barbara and all of us. Right? Becca, I pray for the future of love and our future of love. Mariette, welcome. I pray for humanity to wake up, right? To outrageous love and be bold and courageous to bow down and follow love, right? And oh my God, right? Oots, it's so good to see you. I pray that I may always stay deeply thankful for this wonderful life. And it's wonderful because you're in it. It's great to feel your energy, right? I stand for the future. I partner with Goddess, right? Right, Rob, I pray that love will guide me every way. Becca, I partner with you. Right, Raquel, I pray that my son come out of his isolation, he find a context to develop his gifts. Right, and yes, and may every son come out of isolation, and may David, right, stand in the most beautiful way, your son. Right, I stand for the future. I partner with love. Right, I partner with you, love. Maria, I pray for a present full of love and blessings. I partner with you, love. Right, oh my God, right? Right, Benjamin, I stand for the future. Right, Shata, I pray for Homo More truly to emerge, and I give my all. Right. Paul, right. Oh my God, I pray to grow, right. And all the teachings for the sake of the All Taheli. I pray for my 3 young daughters and they're facing existential risk. Andre, right. Together, creating love, trust, and respect. G, I pray for a new year, right. Of a kind of complete well-being for the whole planet. Right. And Suzanne and Gija, right. Gia, right. I got to make sure I get the name exactly right. Make sure, right. Oh my God, Rick, right? Oh my God, Patrick, right? Jacqueline, Krista, right? Jacques, right? Oh my God, welcome everyone. Let's love this open, right? We are the people. We are the people, right? We are the people. It's ours to do, right? Here it comes. Let's love this open all the way.